Tuesday, July 9th. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Peter Talbot.
Here.
Jim Jinks.
Here.
John Walsh.
Here.
David Belliver.
Here.
John Michael. Fiona Pearson.
Here.
Tricia Kramer.
Here.
Greg Wolf.
Here.
And Dina Allard.
Here.
Everyone present.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'll begin tonight with public communications. Item 3A is the summary of the fourth quarter quarterly consent donations, which is in our packets for your perusal this evening. Brings us to item 3B, which is public comments. If there are members of the public here that would like to address the town council, this is your opportunity. Just state your name and address and come right up to the podium that's here to your left, our right.
Hello, everybody. My name is James Peters. I live at 190 Brentwood Drive, Cheshire. I haven't protested anything since 1970, so bear with me. I'm going to use my teleprompter. I'm here to oppose the construction of a cell tower on King Road. More importantly, I'm here to urge the town council and the town manager to write directly to the Connecticut Siting Council, which has the sole jurisdiction over the approval of the cell tower. The deadline for comment is Saturday, July 13th, so you only have a few days to state your position. The Connecticut Siting Council invited the town council and the town manager to comment on December 11th, 2023, March 13th, 2024, and June 13th at the public hearing that several of us attended. On all three occasions, the town council and the town manager declined to provide input. This was received by the Connecticut Siting Council as tacit approval of the tower by the town of Cheshire, since they raised no objection. So you may have thought you were taking a neutral position, but you took a position favorable to the tower as far as the Siting Council was concerned. This week is your last chance to represent the residents of Cheshire. The residents of King Road and Brentwood Drive just found out about this tower on May 29th when they put the signs up. In 2 days, 3 of us got 96 signatures opposing the location of this cell tower. You all received a package in the U.S. mail from me, I believe, on the 25th, asking you to oppose the location of the tower. Several of us met with Sean Kimball and Arnett Talbot, very gracious, thank you, on June 24th to enlist the town's support in opposing the location of this tower. So I think the residents have done a lot of work on this, and now it's your turn to take action. I have to be direct because Friday's the deadline. You don't represent Tarpon Towers. You don't represent Verizon. You don't represent the landlord of the Big Y property where they're going to put this tower, who's in Cincinnati. You represent the residents of Cheshire. You're our only voice at this point. You're the only ones we have left. We've all been petitioning directly to the Siting Council, getting as much grassroots support as we can, but we need your help. I'm not here to chastise. I'm here to ask for your help. You represent the residents who will be affected by the proximity of this cell tower to our homes. Right now, the only issue that we think we can hang our hat on is the proximity to residences. 85 feet from the tower to Sean Connor's front door, 85 feet. I'm retired, so I've done a lot of research on this. And in the past 3 years, the Connecticut Siting Council has never approved a tower closer to residences than the one to Sean's house. They've never been down to 85 feet. The closest I could come up with in 3 years of Siting Council tower approvals is 235 feet. So Please write to the Connecticut Siting Council before Friday's deadline to oppose the application of docket number 521 for a cell tower on King Road. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. And I appreciate the conversation we had prior to the meeting. And as I mentioned, we will be, the council will be meeting in executive session later tonight to discuss this very topic and giving instruction to the town manager how we would like him to proceed. So thank you. Appreciate you being here.
In the interest of transparency, does it have to go to executive session?
Yes.
Freedom of Information Act, there are 5 reasons why something could go to executive session. What, I need to add on to say one of the 5 reasons.
Would you, can I get you to come back? Sorry. Just, I want to make sure that the public is able to hear what you're saying as
That's
well.
why I'm asking the question about executive session.
I will defer to my town attorney.
It really depends upon what the strategy is going to be that the town wants to take. Under the definition of an executive session in the Freedom of Information Act, there are several categories, one of which is discussion of strategy concerning pending or threatened claims or litigation. If the town, for example, wanted to discuss intervening in the citing council proceeding, that would be the type of matter that you would discuss in executive session, because it would be discussing strategy concerning a potential claim.
That is regarding pending litigation. That's number 1 on the list that's approved.
No, it's
Freedom of
pending,
Information Act,
it's pending or threatened claims or litigation.
right? So are you contemplating, you're not involved in any active litigation because you haven't talked to anybody about any of this?
It's pending or threatened claims or litigation. If the town council wants to talk about strategy, which would potentially involve intervening in a proceeding to oppose an active application, that would be something that could be talked about in executive session.
Okay. Thank you.
I also just have one quick point, and it's on a personal note with regards to the petition coming directly to our personal home addresses. We're involved in advocacy for the town. We're all volunteers up here, so we know civic engagement. But if any correspondence from town could go through town hall instead of directly to our home addresses. I have kids and a husband. I work in Hartford. So mail coming directly to my home that's unidentified, handwritten, sometimes you just run the risk of it not being opened and maybe being overseen because of it being seen as a threat in this day and age. So if, I'm not saying you have every right and every freedom to send mail wherever you'd like, but it has more of a propensity or probability of being opened if it comes through, if it's a town event or concern, if it comes through town hall. I don't speak for anybody else but myself, because I do feel a certain kind of way opening up unknown large packets of mail at my home address.
I understand.
Okay.
I did try to send everything through email with attachments, and 5 came back as blocked. So that's why I resorted to U.S. mail. Rather than just drive by and put them in your mailbox,
Oh,
I
goodness,
sent
no.
them by a
I
government
don't think
agency.
that's allowed. But if you can also give them to town hall, then they can get them to us as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I hope you appreciate where I'm coming from with that. And it's nothing, adverse to public engagement.
Try to do it the right way first.
Hi, I'm Sean O'Connor. I live at 1053 King Road. Speaking of mail, I just want to point this out, and Jay did a great job of explaining a lot of things about the proposed cell phone tower. I'm here to oppose that. The cell phone tower is going to be 82 feet from the mailbox at the bottom of my driveway. And I want you to think about that, 82 feet. My wife and I, my son, we've been in this town for 24 years. Every time we open up our front door, we will see a cell phone tower. Every time we get the mail, we'll see the cell phone tower. Every time we have company over, we're going to see that cell phone tower. The majority of cell phone towers aren't in residential neighborhoods. They're usually on, drive-by streets or big streets, but not across the street from somebody's house. This is going to be a monstrosity for us. And just the way it's going to look, right now we look across the street. Luckily, we have trees during the spring season, the summer season, Big Y. During the winter season, we're going to be seeing a 90-foot tower right across from our house. I'd like to invite all of the council members, and I mean this sincerely, to stop by my house, pull into our driveway, knock on the door, and I'll show you the view that you're going to get. And I think if it was your house, I really think you would not be too happy about this. So I'm respectfully requesting that you consider opposing this cell phone tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. As I was speaking to Mr. Peters before the meeting tonight, that was part of my old paper route, so I am very familiar with that whole area. So, and thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to address the council as part of public communication? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, the approval of minutes. The meetings of June 5th, minutes of June 11th, minutes of June 13th, the minutes of June 17th, minutes of June 25th, and that constitutes our minutes for June. A busy month of June for the council. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Second, Mr. Veliber, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the consent calendar, item number 5, Mr. Jenks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 070924-1. Be resolved, Town Council approves the consent calendar for July 9th, 2024 as follows. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks. Do we have a second? Mr. Mylone, thank you. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 6, items removed from consent calendar. There are none. Item number 7, old business, starting with A, the Bartlam Park South update. Mr. Kimball.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brief update, just 3 items, actually, and they're in your town manager's report for later. But crews have completed grading and initial seeding of the Great Lawn area, along with tree plantings, lamppost installations. Polygon has given an update on the final engineered designs for the band shell, are now estimated to arrive July 31st. That's about 2 weeks after the last report. Fabrication will still take 10 to 12 weeks, which puts the tentative band shell installation date into early November. And lastly, the precast bathroom building is nearing completion off-site. Delivery and installation is tentatively scheduled for July 24th, 25th, and 26th. Once the bathroom building is constructed, the process of installing the electrical transformer and electrical equipment can begin, which will then allow for lighting throughout the site, which could be in the September or October timeframe, depending on Eversource's schedule. So that is the current Bartlam South update.
Questions for Mr. Kimball on Bartlam South? Seeing none, we will move on to item 8B, which is our school building committee update.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. May it please the council. I'm Greg Rosenblatt, 110 Bellamy Road. I'm Vice Chair of the Next Generation School Building Committee. Our Chairman, Rich Gussenberg, is unable to attend, so I'm providing a monthly summary in his place. The Phase 1 bids have been awarded. The bids for material procurement of switchgear, electrical distribution equipment, and generators for both schools range from $1,690,000 to $2,336,000. The owner's representative, O&G Industries, conducted a scope review of the bid package presented by the low bidder and considered the low bidder qualified to provide the requested services. The low bidder at $1,690,000 is A&R Electric Incorporated of Bridgeport. The equipment is to be furnished to Phase 2 electrical trade contractor in the spring of 2025. Site enabling work for the new Norton School involves relocation of a portion of existing school driveway to make room for a temporary play area, installation of a 3-sided rigid frame culvert across Sharon Drive access road, and construction of a temporary play area in front of the existing school to compensate for play areas that will be lost during the Phase 2 construction of the new school. Site enabling work for the North End School involves installation of temporary fencing and gates, site regrading to install settlement platforms, recording elevation readings of settlement platforms until anticipated settlement occurs and/or settlement readings have stabilized. The bids for site enabling at both schools ranged from $1,937,158 to $2,156,000. The owner's representative, ONG Industries, conducted a scope review of the bid package presented by the low bidder and considered the low bidder qualified to provide the requested services. The low bidder at $1,937,158 is Richards Corporation of Terryville. The initial shovel in the ground is scheduled for July 23. This Phase 1 work represents approximately 3% of the school construction budget. Okay, any questions, or thank you?
Thank you, Mr. Rosenblatt.
Thank you.
Good to see you 2 months in a row now,
Yep.
getting to be
Next month, Rick.
getting to be a regular. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenblatt. Just a quick question on that. You said it's, I know it's a low percentage, but I know you guys had figured budget and everything.
Yes.
And where were you budgeting compared to where these came in?
We came in close. It's only about 3%. It was about 100,000 over the estimates, but again, it was an estimate.
Okay.
But our owner's rep feels that's, within the margin of error. That we're
Still on budget?
Still on budget, yes.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, Mr. Rosenblatt, thank you very much, and wish our best to Mr. Gussenberg, and we look forward to seeing him back in August. Moving on to new business items. The reason for all of the minutes we adopted tonight is because tonight we will adopt the fiscal year 24-25 annual capital expenditure budget. That resolution is up now. Mr. Jenks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification, Sean, the last 3 items were not including in the resolution, is that correct?
That's correct. So with the last 3 items are referendum items, and
Right.
under the charter, the referendum must be held within 60 to 90 days after the appropriations made. So we're actually too early in the process to call for a November referendum. I mean, you could call for a September referendum, but you can't call for a November 5th referendum. And so the idea would be we would convene again in August and approve those 3. But we did include the resolutions so we can, you can see what it'll look like, and also because they're part of the overall 5-year plan as well that we'll be adopting later. So just kind of confirmation that that's the direction the council's going.
And just to clarify, Sean, when our regularly scheduled meeting is within the time frame, correct?
I believe it is, right, because it's August 13th, I believe
I
it is.
I
think
want to
we had
say we
confirmed.
talked about that when we did the meeting, set the meeting dates,
Yeah, so we can confirm.
back
that.
in December or whatever.
I feel like it's
Yeah.
usually later than that. I feel like the date.
Yeah, we have done it later, but I think with November 5th, I think it's actually like right at 88 days or something. So if we need another meeting later in the month, we can talk about
Yeah,
that.
okay. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Mr. Jenks, thank you.
Thank you. So instead of 43 items, I'm going to read 40 items, so that's great. Be resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 070924-2. Be it resolved, the Town Council adopts the annual capital budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. And the items include a technology reserve fund replacement equipment for $250,000. Town and school security project, $110,000. Vehicle equipment replacement fund, $395,000. Boiler replacement at the police station, $50,000. Various town building improvements, $310,000. Roof replacement at the police station, $25,000. Salt shed at Public Works Garage, $50,000. Improvements to Harmon Leonard Junior Youth Center, $35,000. West Main Street Canal dredging, $100,000. Townwide transportation studies, $150,000. Public Works dump truck and plow, $380,000. Sidewalk maintenance program, $100,000. Sidewalk extension program, $100,000. Jarvis Street and Marion Road sidewalk extensions, $300,000. Stormwater drainage disconnects, MS4 sediment disposal, $110,000. Paving of parking lots and access drives, Bartlett Park, $385,000. Lakeview culvert improvements, $340,000. Intersection realignment of Weeks Road, $35,000. Public Works grounds equipment, $130,000. Elmwood pump station upgrade, $200,000. Denitrification facility upgrade, $500,000. In-kind treatment plant and pump station equipment replacement, $300,000. SCADA notification system upgrade, $250,000. Inflow and infiltration investigation and remediation, $400,000. HVAC upgrade at water pollution control facility, $250,000. Bartland Park Skate Park, concrete surface and new additional ramps, $110,000. Park and open space improvements to include signage, bleachers, disc golf course at Cheshire Park, court conversion pickleball as well, $100,000. Parking lot replacement at Cheshire Community Pool, $155,000. Pool boiler replacement and roof repair, $225,000. Adaptive turf field, $100,000. District roof ladder replacement and installation, $125,000. Roof replacement at Highland School, $50,000. District lavatory improvements, $115,000. HVAC replacement, RTU at Dodd Middle School, $150,000. Unit ventilator replacements at the high school, Dodd and Doolittle, $175,000. We're almost there. Fire alarm control system, Cheshire High School and Doolittle, $100,000. Auditorium replace rooftop units, Cheshire High School, $50,000. District stormwater management improvements, $125,000. Main office and cafeteria HVAC improvements at Highland, $50,000. And electrical upgrade and emergency generator additional funding for Highland at $200,000. The total for the 2024-25 capital budget is $10,670,000.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Walsh, thank you. Discussion, Mr. Jinks.
So the, capital budget, obviously, the result of hard work by the council, by the town staff, and all the department heads. We had started off, the amount was a little bit over 15 million. I'm happy that we brought it down and we worked together to bring it down to a little under 11 million, which is a little bit below the running average of the last 10 years. So, obviously with the taxpayer in mind, I think we did a good job of really limiting this, with a few small exceptions, like the, disc golf and pickleball courts, which were small dollar projects, but with a few small exceptions, I think we ended up with a list of projects here that are more or less need to be done, or really kind of need to be done first, need to be done this year. And there's a couple of important projects here that are amounts here that are really just for initial design, initial planning work as far as the police station and the salt shed, and we're not getting a salt shed for $50,000. But so there's some important first steps there, but things that needed to be done at some point in the future. So all in all, I think we ended up in a very good place, and I appreciate the efforts of the entire council and everyone involved.
Further discussion? Mr. Mylone?
Just had a couple of questions. On item 26, Bartland Park, Skate Park, I thought we had agreed that it was a bituminous surface. Is it a concrete surface now?
No, it is a bituminous surface.
I don't know if that's that's necessary, oh, I don't know if that's necessary to change or for clarification or, but,
On the, let me look here. In the resolution,
yeah,
I'll only double check.
number 26.
Yeah. Right, when they're doing the other paving.
Just a
Yes.
clarification, I mean, I think we
Yeah,
all
that's
know
fine.
what's being proposed there. It just says a concrete surface, which I think we did not go with it.
That's correct. That lower amount reflects bituminous surface, so bond council may have just lifted that from the initial request, so that's a, if you want to change concrete to bituminous asphalt or whatever the right terminology would be, that's a definitely acceptable
know.
amendment to it, for sure.
That's fine. The other item is item 30. We have adaptive turf field at Bartlam Park, and I can't remember the discussion that much, but did we agree that we were going to put that money in to study opportunities and options for using the money that the state has allocated for us? But I thought we also agreed that we hadn't committed that that would be at Bartlam Park yet, and that that was open-ended as to where it would go. So I don't know if that should just say adaptive turf field investigations or something, and not be.
If that's the
I don't
case,
wanna
yeah,
further
we can definitely change that as well. That, I don't remember exactly where we landed on that, so that's, again, if, that certainly gives us more flexibility. We're not held to one location. If that's something the council's looking to do, that's not a problem at all.
And the last thing, it's said in your memo, Sean, that we added $150,000 for municipal animal control facility upgrades. And I really don't recall the discussion, but I don't see it now. I guess I'm missing it. What number is that?
That's not in this list.
Where, which memo?
Sorry, your email. Well, it's your memorandum, I guess, to the town council, July 9th. It said added municipal animal control facility upgrades. I don't remember, again, I don't remember where we left off on that. I thought we were holding off on that for this
Oh,
year.
no, yeah, that should not be in the memo.
Okay.
Apologies there, no.
It's
that
not in
was-
the budget, so
No, that was a change from before the last meeting, but no, that shouldn't be in there, and it's not in the 24th.
So we don't have to, it's just in the memo, it's not in the budget, so I don't think it's important.
That's correct.
I don't have any other comments, Peter, or Jim.
Yeah, that one was bumped to year 2, yep.
Before I go to you, Ms. Kramer, Mr. D'Onofrio, do you recommend that we do an amendment to the resolution then? As a friendly amendment from Mr. Mylone for those two particular items?
A friendly amendment would be fine, recognizing the consensus to vote upon, deliberate upon, and take action upon the list as amended.
Then you're okay with making that, Mr. Mylone?
I'm fine with that, yes.
Excellent. And Mr. Walsh, the second? Perfect. Okay. So just note that, that item 26 refers to the surface as being bituminous, and that number 30 just addresses adaptive turf field without a specific location that the council will decide at a later date. Thank you, Mr. Mylone, for those pickups. Ms. Kramer?
This has directly to do with the state legislators making multiple announcements as to the adaptive field being specifically located at Bartlam Park, and those have been released. I think there should be some sort of communication between us and the state level that is announcing this money and the actual place where it's being spent. I think that should be done as soon as possible to get that messaging straight and let them know that as a town, if that's what we're doing, we have not agreed on that being the location, because as far as any state-released memos or notice, it is specifically being engaged as the spot. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Thank you. And I want to thank my colleagues here, too, because as Mr. Jinks said, we did start off with over 15 million on here, and we cut it by a third. And I thank everybody for looking at this as we're looking at our needs right now. For the next several years, we're going to be looking at needs. And thanks, Trish, for that comment about the park. Although you read it on Facebook, it's not always true. You know, headlines, it's not true when you always read things on Facebook. It did bother me that, you know, it was being told to us where this park was going to be when we didn't even talk about it yet as a council, nor the Park and Rec Department didn't. So I think you're 100% correct. We need to let them know that, you know, we will have to investigate where we want to put this. I am all for it. My wife was part of the Kids in Motion Park that they built at Bartlett, and I think it's a great thing. And I know with Darcy being offline, we're going to need a place for the challenges to play, and I think it's a great thing, and I appreciate the state for getting us that money. But there's a lot of work ahead of us before we see that park going. And I do want to say one thing about although it's not, we're not voting on this tonight, but the referendum questions, and I know it's a lot of money when you see $2.8 million for road paving. I would have liked to have dropped it a little bit more, but we have to remember 2 of those main roads that are being paved are important roads in this town to some of our biggest taxpayers. And we need to make sure those roads are safe and secure for those people, as well as residents who have to drive on those roads. So I urge the town to look at that and say, yes, this is well worth voting on come November. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Anyone else? Mr. Jinks?
So we had the friendly amendment, there was a motion and a
In
second.
in
We
a
didn't vote.
second on that, but we can do that all at the end when we vote, correct? Yeah.
Okay.
Seeing no one else, I'll add my 2 cents, so that takes us up to 11 million, what, with the, and 2 cents. I want to thank the Budget Committee, Mr. Jenks, Ms. Pearson, Mr. Mylone for their work. Obviously, all of us were very involved with the process, and I thank my colleagues for the work. As Mr. Walsh mentioned, we were able to take 1/3 of the amount originally proposed off, and Mr. Rosenblatt is here tonight from the School Building Committee, and that is certainly in the forefront of our minds as we look at capital budgets over the next few years and keeping the taxpayers sharply in our focus to make sure that we are not overburdening them with the understanding that there's going to be more money coming down the line towards the school projects that we have to repay. So that's an important thing that we consider as we look through these. To Mr. Jinks' point, you know, we all talked about doing must-haves rather than nice-to-haves. We do have a couple nice-to-haves in the pickleball courts and the disc golf. Thank you very much. You would think I'd remember that one of all people, right? It has the word golf in it. But the dollar amounts on those were certainly, you know, were certainly reasonable, and we felt it was an appropriate time to do that. So I will fully support the capital budget as presented this evening. So thank you to everyone, and my thanks to staff. That's the one I forgot. To Sean, Arnett, Noel, Jim Jascott, the department heads. You guys do a tremendous amount of work to put this together, and it does not go unnoticed, and we thank you for your efforts in presenting this to us for consideration. So thank you. And with that, I will call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Item B is the approval of fiscal years 24-25 to 28-29, the 5-year capital plan. Mr. Jinks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 070924-3. Be it resolved the town council approves the 5-year capital expenditure plan for fiscal years 2024-25 through 2028-2029.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Walsh, thank you. Discussion, Mr. Jinks.
Well, obviously, we just passed the first year of the 5-year plan. This is just a resolution to pass the 2 through 5 years. These are, at this point, placeholder projects, placeholder amounts, but they are, we gave some thought as to what should be in second, third, fourth year. But obviously, it's something that each year we will continue to review and see what, as we said, over the next several years, a lot of the things that are on the 5-year plan after this year are, we're going to be looking closely whether or not they are things we absolutely have to do now, or we can, perhaps survive another year or two not doing them because we have such a large, large amount of debt coming online here in the next year or two due to the new school. So, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Comments from the council? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Item number C is the appointments to the Veterans Advisory Committee. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 070924-4. Be it resolved pursuant to Resolution Number 061724-1, the Town Council established a Veterans Advisory Committee, and be it further resolved that the following residents are hereby appointed to serve on the Veterans Advisory Committee from the present through January 31st, 2027. As follows: Don Falk, Democrat, veteran; Jeff Falk, Republican, veteran; Tom Hickey, Democrat, veteran; Nancy Tapp, Republican, veteran; Scott Allard, unaffiliated, veteran; Leslie Marinero, Republican, member; and Pam Guglielmino, unaffiliated, member.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Mr. Wolf, I'd be happy to do discussion unless you'd like to introduce it. So this was, as established by the Ordinance Review Committee at our June meeting. We are now actually making the full appointments to the committee. As you remember, as part of the ordinance, there are 5 veterans and 2 members. So 5 of the people on the committee must be honorably discharged veterans, and we have met that requirement. Personally, I want to thank Jeff Falk for his work on this, and Don Falk, who's been very active since the beginning. This puts together a full group of 7 individuals who will assist going forward as we tackle several projects as listed in the ordinance. And this council, I know, really looks forward to the work that you're going to be doing, not only with Bartlett South, but with ceremonies and things going forward. So, anyone else? Mr. Mylone.
Thank you, Peter. I would like to speak briefly about this. I intend to vote in support of all these individuals, and I'm happy to see Don and Jeff here and have tremendous respect and appreciation for all they've done for the veterans community in our town for many, many years. I have worked with them personally on some initiatives, and I know how much of their own personal time they put in. I don't know all these individuals. I think I know more than half, and from what I know of them, they're all have demonstrated their support for our veterans and public service to do excellent work. I did want to express, as I did in an email to the council, my disappointment with the process. I felt it was not as inclusive as maybe we've had processes in the past. I know it did not involve any of the minority members of the council in terms of identifying these individuals, although I think, as I said, they're well-rounded and diverse, and so that's good. The last two committees that I had been involved in with the council populating were the School Building Committee and the Fair Rent Commission, and both of those involved a different process where we went out to general requests to residents and received expressions of interest and went through an evaluation and interview process before it came, and a selection process before it came to the council for a vote. I would have preferred that here. I don't know if it would have changed anything, and again, nothing against the individuals, and particularly Don and Jeff, who I know have devoted much of their personal time and much of their life to these efforts. But I would hope that maybe in the future, we try and make the time to make the process a little bit more open and inclusive, because we don't know what else is out there, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? So go ahead, Mr. Jinks.
I just want to echo the chairman's comments, and thanks to Jeff and Don and everyone else that was involved in working with the ordinance committee to come up with this new committee. And I think you guys submitted the names more or less to us as far as I think who you felt would make up an appropriate group. As I expressed before, I was concerned that this was going to sort of supersede or kind of get in the way of a lot of the work that you guys were already doing. So I feel like I understand, John, what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying completely about being more inclusive. I think in this case, I feel like you guys having a lot of input on who was going to be on the committee, at least initially, made a lot of sense. So, but I just want to say thank you again. I'm glad that we have taken this step as a council to put this committee together, and we're looking forward to your work. Thanks.
So, Mr. Malone, the only thing that I will say is I said in my response to the email you sent, is that there, and I'll ask Ms. Talbot to make sure I'm getting this correctly, that there really is nothing in the charter or in the ordinances that sets out a process. The only thing that the committees say is that the committee members will be appointed by the council. And that, in this case, that's what we're doing, and that's always been the last step, no matter whether it's fair rent or, environment or any of the standing committees. So I think your point is very well taken. I would almost like to see us codify a committee process, and I would be absolutely in favor of taking it away from the two political parties and putting it in the hands of the council to say, let's do an open invitation, an application process, no matter what the committee is, whether it's a standing committee or a new committee we stand up. We've fallen into this that I have talked about for years and years on this council, that we allow all of these committees to be political committees or political appointees. I would love to see them done similar to what we did with Fair Rent, similar to what we did with the Next Gen School Committee, and have just an application process. And then be able to still stay within the state statutes and the parameters regarding membership requirements, but I think that's a much better way of doing it. It may not be, a popular opinion amongst the parties, but it's one that I would prefer to see. So I thank you for bringing that up. Further comments from? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item D, acceptance and appropriation of $200,000 from Elam Park to the Cheshire Police Department gift account. Ms. Pearson.
Be it resolved, the Town Council approves Resolution 070924-5 Be it resolved that the Town Council accepts a $200,000 donation from Elam Park Baptist Home Incorporated to the Cheshire Police Department, and appropriate said donation to the Police Department gift account as presented and attached.
Mr. Jenks was in first. I will give him the second on that one. We'll, a little bit quicker, and you can have the next one, Mr. Veliver. Discussion, Ms. Pearson?
All I'll say, this is a regular donation that has been provided very graciously by Elam Park to the Cheshire Police Department. We thank Elam Park very much for regularly supporting our police department in this way. How many years has Elam Park, do we know, been contributing?
As far back as I can remember, they've been
So
doing
we
this.
appreciate their contributions to our community.
Thank you. Comments from the council? Mr. Walsh?
So this is the list of items that we have here, that they're going to be using it?
Correct, yes.
So-
Chief Drive presented this during budget, and so he just went over, they're completely described here, but ranging from furniture and painting to mobile computers for cruisers, IT upgrades, cruiser changeover, new taser cartridges and batteries, traffic safety supplies, training and accreditation, community programs, uniforms, and personal equipment.
Thank you. Want to make sure I got it.
And a lot of these, too, Mr. Walsh, are probably familiar to those of us that have been on the council and seen this appropriation in the past. Both Chief Drive and Chief Kasner utilize these to do things that normally would be part of the operating budget. So indeed, we thank Elam Park for their generosity. Further comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Item E is the acceptance and appropriation of $200,000 from Elam Park to the Cheshire Fire Department gift account. Ms. Pearson?
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 070924-6. Be it resolved that the Town Council accepts a $200,000 donation from Elam Park Baptist Home Incorporated to the Cheshire Fire Department, and appropriate said donation to the Fire Department gift account as presented and attached.
Mr. Veliver? Quick on the draw, I like that. Ms. Pearson, any discussion beyond what we talked about in item D?
Yeah, similarly to the Police Department, the Cheshire Fire Department, very much thanks, and we thank Elam Park for their donation. They will be spending these funds on equipment, contractual services, personnel expenses, training expenses, automotive equipment and supplies, and property maintenance and improvements.
Further comments from the council? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item F, authorization to apply to the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security's State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program, commonly known as the SLCGP, in a not-to-exceed amount of $250,000 for upgrades to the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, SCADA system at the wastewater treatment plant. Mr. Jenks,
You want to say that again?
I'll let you do it this time.
Be resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 070924-7. Be resolved that the Town Council authorizes application for 2024 Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program, SLCGP, in an amount not to exceed $250,000, and accepts and appropriates said grant to be used for upgrades to the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition SCADA system at the wastewater treatment plant. And be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute any and all necessary documents associated with the grant.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. And Mr. Martelli is anxious to.
Yeah, I'm not going to go back through that, but just real simply, so this is actually an item that's in your capital budget for the $250,000, and so this grant application is open. It's due on the 14th of July, I'm sorry, the 19th of July. I'm working with Apex, who's our IT vendor here, as well as Water Pollution Control to put together the grant application. We met about it last week. It does fall within the parameters of what they're looking for through this open program, so we're hopeful that we're going to be able to get that. So then that would reduce the town's share of the $250,000 just to the 10% match, which would be $25,000, which I think would be a great get for us. So that's the purpose of it. I can't speak to the exact technical control, but from the reports I read, is there's some deficiencies in some equipment and servers and some IT items that are not currently still serviced by Microsoft, and so this would all go to upgrade all that equipment over at Water Pollution Control.
It's a very fortuitous time and timely item for us.
Yeah, the timing was really good, and as Andrew said, it was only just announced really in the last week or 2 weeks, and as you see, the deadline's very soon, so it was great that we had a project kind of already teed up that fit the bill. And as Andrew said, it is, and as we talked about during the WPCD capital budget presentation, the SCADA system is in need of upgrades, and it's running an older Windows system that is no longer being updated, so it needs to get upgraded, hence its eligibility for this grant. So we're optimistic, and again, as Andrew said, the source of funds would shift from bonding and debt service to grant funds under the same appropriation.
So even though the amount that we just approved for the capital budget was $10,670,000, we've already saved the town $225,000 or so.
Right, and as you recall, there were a few others of those as well. Anytime we have grant offsets, we have that sort of net number when we track the total appropriations. So yeah, you're exactly right. The amount that we'd actually be bonding is far less than the overall 10.7 million.
We're on it.
Ms. Kramer?
Just a quick thank you, because I know under your watch, the amount of grant money and grant that you guys are applying for is just astronomical. I appreciate it.
Got it. Of course.
Seeing no other comments, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item G is the approval of the updated State of Connecticut DOT Master Municipal Agreement for construction projects. I would recommend everyone settle in, as Ms. Allard is going to read each one of these pieces of paper.
Be it resolved that Town Council approves Resolution Number 070924-8. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby approves the Connecticut Department of Transportation Master Municipal Agreement for construction projects for a 10-year term. And be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute this agreement pursuant to the terms and conditions as presented and the approval by the Town Attorney as to form and function.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Walsh, thank you. Ms. Eller, do you have discussion, or do you want to turn it over to Mr. Kimball?
Probably best if I turn it over to Mr. Kimball. It's my understanding that it's just basically an agreement that we would ordinarily be having, and it's due to be renewed with some minor changes. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So
All
this
right.
was last entered into in August of 2013, so a little over 10 years ago. It's an agreement, the Master Municipal Agreement establishes terms and conditions for municipal projects that are funded in whole or in part by state and federal funds administered by Connecticut DOT. And this has been reviewed and read word for word by our esteemed town attorney to my left. So I will turn it over to him after Dina turns it to me.
So for the last few decades, the DOT has handled, whether it's as a conduit of federal funds to municipalities or through state-funded public works projects, the task of contracts with 169 recipient municipalities in this manner. There's a master municipal agreement that sets forth the terms and conditions, a lot of which are required by state law, whether it be with respect to procurement, whether it be with respect to non-discrimination, set-asides, and terms and conditions. So you have essentially one master municipal agreement between the DOT and all 169 municipalities. And then when individual projects come along, they do a project authorization letter. So that way, instead of doing it the old way, where every time there was a project, you'd have a whole new contract, you have the meat of the relationship and the expectations set. And what that lets you do is when the town goes out to bid for contractors, which it does every time it has state or federal funds for one of these projects, it can incorporate the terms and conditions of the master municipal agreement into the contract so that bidders price those obligations and requirements into their bid. So the MMA, this isn't something new, this is, a new version, but it's updated from time to time to keep pace with changes in federal and state law. But essentially think of it as terms and conditions. A lot of consumer contracts have gone in the same direction now. If you subscribe to various products or services, you'll find that there's master terms and conditions on their website. Most people don't actually read them, but they're there. This actually is a document that they require be approved so that the municipalities understand what they're committing to. And really, there's nothing in here that's unusual. It just presents different operational and implementation challenges, and they all get passed on to contractors and design professionals that are doing the work on the specific projects under the PALs. Okay?
Mr. Walsh.
Forgive me for not reading the entire document, but this doesn't list specific projects that are going on. It's just a plan of action for whatever state roads or whatever we're doing that involve the state and us, right? Okay.
Consider it as the, if you get any money from us, here's what you have to do. Yeah. Or these are the strings attached to anything we give you.
More accurate, yes. Any other questions? Call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Item H is the acceptance and appropriation of $90,000 Round 19 Brownfield Area-Wide Revitalization Grant for the West Main Street Business District Planning Project. Mr. Wolf.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 070924-9. Be it resolved that the Town Council accepts and appropriates the Town of Cheshire's Brownfield Planning Grant Award in the amount of $90,000. And be it further resolved that the Town Council appropriates $10,000 from the capital planning account for the town's matching obligation. And be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute any and all documentation for said grant.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Thank you, Mr. Jenks, for the second. Discussion, will throw it to the podium to Mr. Martelli.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we submitted the grant application back in March to DECD through their Brownfield program, through the BAR Planning Grant. Received notification back on June 14th that we were successful in our application for the $90,000 in state money, which requires $10,000 match, which brings the project amount to $100,000. This is our second round of funding. Currently, we're working with the consultant who's working through to come up with the form-based code for West Main Street. Spoke with Jason Williams, who's our main contact over at SLR for the project today. We're expecting to have a deliverable from them by the end of next week, which is going to have design standards, specific zoning regulations, and the whole packet with maps and whatnot, which would then go through the Planning and Zoning Commission for their review and ultimate determination if they're going to adopt it or what's going to move forward with the BAR plan for phase one. This money here is going to be directed towards a marketing study for the area, streetscape design, and then site-specific brownfield assessment. We haven't identified what those properties are going to be for, if it's a phase one or phase two environmental site assessment. It's not a ton of money to do that work, but the idea is to have seed money, so if a developer does come along, there is some funding in order to help to move some of those projects forward. I don't want to use it to analyze the canal. I'm going to try to go after some additional money through another brownfields round for that to do the actual analytical testing for the dredging of the canal. So bottom line is it's just additional funding to pay for some more studies to help to further develop the West Main Street area. And I could take any questions to that end.
Thank you, Mr. Martelli. Any questions from members of the council? Mr. Veliber?
Andrew, I appreciate the work you're doing and great job with, getting these grants. This is very helpful to move us forward. how much, I guess, in theory, how much further does this move you along in the process? I mean, I know it's a pretty big project, and
Yep.
Will you need more grants to go forward? Or?
It's all going to be dependent on when we get the final deliverable and then we go through planning and zoning, what comes out of that process. And so it hasn't gone to planning and zoning for review yet. So the first phase of it hasn't gone to planning and zoning. So once that happens, this money is going to be used to help to supplement those efforts. So we're going to have to hire another consultant, or we're going to have to amend the existing contract that we have with the consultant. And we actually have a call with the Office of Brownfield Redevelopment tomorrow with Banu Chandi to talk about keeping the same consultant and moving their services forward, because there's a lot of keeping the same person on board to help to further the studies really makes a lot of sense. So that's the best that I can tell you right now. So will there have to be additional engineering and planning money? I would say we could go after another round of this, but I'd like to see how far we're able to get with this funding. And then I really want to go after, there's a municipal grant fund round, and I want to go after that for all the analytical testing that's going to be required in engineering services for the canal. And so that grant, I'm going to come to you guys for authorization to apply for that, and that'll be in the fall.
Thank you.
So.
Ms. Pearson?
Like my fellow counselors, I wish to thank you so much for all of your work in these grants, and also all of this work in terms of working with the Brownfield area revitalization. I know, as we'll be talking about later in this meeting, the sustainability, or the Sustainable CT team is in the process of recertifying Cheshire, and all of this work that you're doing is going to be something that we'll be able to put towards our certification. So I just want to thank you for all the work that
Great,
you're doing.
appreciate that.
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, and again, thank you for what you're doing. Just a quick question, because I know, does this hold up any potential sales of properties or anything until this plan gets approved, or?
I mean, sale of private property is really up to the property owners, but the current zoning has been the current zoning for X amount of years, and so what the town may or may not approve for change of zoning, I mean, it's up to the property owners to make that decision. It's a good question. We've been approached by a lot of developers who want this to come to fruition. They want to move this forward, but we're trying to, we're doing it thoughtfully, and we're taking our time to make sure that when we get to planning and zoning, they have a lot on their agenda as it is with POCD and everything else that's going on in town, so to make sure that this plan is fully baked. And, if a property owner wants to, like currently some of the larger properties are zoned industrial and you couldn't do mixed use on them, and so this will allow them to be able to do that, but they're going to have to wait.
It'll give them more opportunities, I understand that.
Yep.
That's what I was wondering, because I know how you work, and you probably have a list of potential buyers for all properties in the town, all over the place. And you work really hard at that, and I appreciate it. And I think what you're doing is, strategically developing this town to keep its character.
Yep.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
And like you said, it's one of those questions that I get a lot, because it's all going to come down to what planning and zoning allows. They might say, like, Martelli's crazy, like this is going to stay all industrial and we're not going to allow any of this, and then the town will be out $10,000 match, but the state will just have to deal with that. And the grant program itself is new for these brownfield area type redevelopments. And I do have to say that in talking to the state, they like what we're doing here, and we have had successes with the different projects. We're going to have a flag raising over at Ballinsocket in a couple weeks, and so we're kind of like leading the charge, and so it's kind of uncharted territory. And so I appreciate you guys supporting it. Hopefully.
Mr. Milone?
So, Andrew?
Yep.
I know SLR is involved. I'm not really connected at all with the work that we're doing there. So who's the client then, if it's not planning and zoning? I didn't realize this work wasn't being done for planning.
The client is the town of Cheshire.
And is it go through economic development, or is it just the staff?
It's myself and it's Mike Glidden. So we're the two town staff, and then we have a bar steering committee,
Okay.
which is made up of the town engineer, myself, Mike Glidden, and then a representative from Ballinsocket. You got an augur from the Chamber of Commerce, a resident, and then property owner and a business owner all in the district. So when we sent the first BART planning, we had to have an established committee. We established a committee of 8. And so they've been on. One person has changed because there was a change in leadership over at Rebel Interactive, but they're like the main employer in the area, and the state wanted to see a whole kind of menu of people that had diverse backgrounds to just represent the neighborhood. But to answer your question, were the town's the client?
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I didn't really
Yep.
fully understand that. I think this is a great initiative. It's a tremendous opportunity for the town, whether SLR stays involved or not. I would suspect that this will get you to a point where you would have a form-based code or whatever kind of zoning structure in place so that planning and zoning could adopt it or modify it and adopt it. But clearly, there will be a need for infrastructure work to support the development there, so there will be probably some more investment, just from my own personal opinion, to move this forward.
Yeah, and to remind you, because I'm not sure if you were on the council, so we did receive we have $400,000 in economic development money specific for that area to pay for additional studies. I'm just trying to continue any money that I can get from the state to supplement these efforts. I'm going after, because we have that $400,000. That $400,000 can be used for construction and for planning. So I'm trying to keep that and use the planning money specific to planning to be able to plan. So if we wanted to do more parking or streetscaping, we have actual money to do some of these projects. So
It's a great opportunity you're realizing, so thank you.
appreciate it.
Anything else from members of the council? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Brings us to item 8I, award of contract for special inspections coordination and materials testing for the North End Elementary School project. Ms. Kramer.
I want to preface my reading this with, I've been working the past 2 lunch hours on integrating this amazing technology that we've been given by the town, and I'm trying to go paperless, so forgive any
Yes.
administrative mess-ups that I haven't worked out here. Okay. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 070924-10. Be it resolved that pursuant to the final selection of the Next Generation School Building Committee, the Town Council hereby awards the contract for special inspections coordination and materials testing for the North End Elementary School project to TestCon Incorporated at a total cost not to exceed $92,000. And be it further resolved that the town manager is authorized to execute the contracts pursuant to these awards and the town's bid documents upon the approval by the town attorney as to form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Discussion. Mr. Rosenblatt, do you want to, is there anything you'd like to say regarding the contract?
Thank you. Both this one and the succeeding one for the Norton project are pretty much the same, but I checked with our construction manager, and this material testing and special inspection work is mandated by the state and a requirement of construction work. And basically, it's a new set of eyes, a third party to do periodic independent inspection of the work, which is done monthly. Materials are routinely tested and inspected as they're installed to make sure they meet the design team specifications. He said a few things that TestCon would do are test the soil for adequate compaction, test concrete for adequate strength, and test steel to make sure the weld joints and bolt connections are proper. So it's basically an independent looking over the project as it goes on.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenblatt. Questions? Mr. Jenks.
Are these items reimbursable as part of the project?
You betcha.
Right.
Betcha.
Very good answer, Mr. Drummond.
Yes. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 8J, award of contract for special inspections, coordination, and materials testing for the new Norton Elementary School project. Ms. Kramer.
Okay, doggedly determined, here we go. J. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 070924-11. Be it resolved that pursuant to the final selection of the Next Generation School Building Committee, the Town Council hereby awards the contract for special inspections, coordination, and materials testing for the new Norton Elementary School project to TestCon Incorporated at a total not to exceed $100,000. And be it further resolved that the town manager is authorized to execute the contracts pursuant to these awards and the town's bid documents upon the approval by the town attorney as to form and legal sufficiency.
Was that it? Mr. Walsh, thank you. We have a motion and a second. I assume this is the same as the last one, the difference being we have moved from North End to Norton. Any questions from colleagues? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving to item 8K, the award of consulting contract for energy efficiency tax credit application assistance under the Federal Inflation Reduction Act. Ms. Allard.
I am definitely not as cool or as brave as Miss Kramer. I'm still relying on the paper, but we'll get there. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution Number 070924-12. Be it resolved, the Town Council hereby awards the consulting contract for Inflation Reduction Act tax credit services for the new Norton and North End Elementary School projects to Clifton Larson Allen LLP in the amount not to exceed $60,000, and be it further resolved that the town manager is authorized to execute the contracts pursuant to these conditions upon the approval by the town attorney as to form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Kimball, if you would, please, discussion.
Sure. So this has come up, I know, when Rich Gussenberg had presented back a few months ago. This was first raised and discussed as an opportunity. Under the 2022 Federal Inflation Reduction Act, there is language and an opportunity to seek reimbursable funding for what are effectively tax credits or payments in the case of the town. Under the Act for certain energy efficiency components of the two new elementary schools. Based on a preliminary analysis done, and again, credit to our school building committee, of which I'm a member, we have had some discussions about ways to seek this additional offsetting revenue to help the town with the overall burden, the overall cost of the projects. And in this case, CLA, which is also they also serve as the town's auditors. They have proposed services. Their range is about $40,000 to $60,000. You'll see the not to exceed request here is $60,000 for three different pieces of consulting: pre-construction consulting, cost segregation and credit calculations, and also credit reporting. Ultimately, it's estimated that the town could receive over $2 million in eligible refund payments under the Inflation Reduction Act. So the opinion of both the committee and town staff is this is money well spent to seek that kind of reimbursable funding. It won't add to the project. This would be revenue to the town. The town council can ultimately decide what to do with, whether you apply it to debt service or apply it to future energy efficiency upgrades, solar panels or the like that you could apply to the schools themselves or anywhere around town. So ultimately, we strongly feel this is a good investment of money and a good return on investment. And so ultimately, that's the proposal before you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Any questions? Mr. Malone.
I have one, when Sean was making the explanation, so we get the tax credit money, we don't have to apply it to any physical improvements, we can use it to reduce debt service? That's.
You're right. You can use it. It becomes revenue back to the town.
Becomes revenue,
There's
and
no, yeah, not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, I was just curious.
Mr. Jenks?
This is essentially a contract for sort of fiscal or financial consulting services. Is that what it is, really?
Yeah, basically, right, exactly.
And
Yeah,
is
but it's
that a-
somewhat
is that a
complicated 'cause
requirement to the application, probably, for the?
I think it's mostly around the complicated nature of the new legislation. And again, I don't, Jeff could correct me if I'm wrong from his understanding, but I know certainly the language in the Inflation Reduction Act contemplates tax credits, right? We are not a taxable entity, so there's a certain specific formula and calculation in enabling language in the legislation that allows municipalities to take advantage of tax credits, even though we can't traditionally take advantage of tax credits. So converting them into payments, and you'll see in the proposal credit calculations of available credits and the methodology or whatever it is, I think, to convert those into dollars for the town. That's my understanding.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else from colleagues? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Items L, M, and O are for executive session. I am, however, going to move up item N to this point, which is a discussion regarding the proposed cell tower, and we will move that from executive session to public session, and I will let Mr. Kimball kick off our discussion.
Sure. So, and as Mr. Peters, who I know is still here, referenced earlier, this, just to be kind of clear about the process for everybody, this proposed cell tower from Cellco Partners Verizon is going through a process that's not a local process. It's a state siting council process. It supersedes local zoning. In this case, there's engagement throughout the process with the town, notifications, but the actual approval rests with the siting council, as Mr. Peters said earlier. What we're being asked now, and I had a good meeting with individuals in the King Road area, I guess 2 weeks ago now, and the request, as you heard earlier, was for the town to take a position opposing the tower and submit testimony opposing it. For us and for staff's perspective, and I just kind of give some history, for my last 6+ years here, cell coverage in the south end has been a recurring issue and constant complaint. I've received complaints in my office or conversations, certainly and most significantly with Elam Park. I know we talked about earlier in the evening. I've worked closely with Brian Bedard, the CEO there, to try desperately to improve cell coverage in the south end and the Cook Hill area. You can't make or receive cell phone calls in many parts of Elam Park's facility. Given the population there, that can be a real concern from a public safety, public health standpoint. It is a real concern. Cell coverage in the south end is a real concern for both our police chief and fire chief. We talk about it a lot. There are certainly dead zones, there's drop calls, and there's challenges. We have partnered, I've had numerous conversations over the last few years with, including Elam Park and other property owners in the area about proposed or possible locations for a cell tower. We did not facilitate this specific one, but as you can see in the application, they considered 8 other locations. I know of another that probably never became considered that we had, the RWA property further down on South Main, that we looked into with the RWA as a possible cell tower location. I certainly understand and sympathize with the individuals in the area. Ultimately, from staff's perspective, I think if a better location was to be found over the last 5 or 6 years, it would have been found at this point. And I think we're weighing the public safety concerns against the proximity and aesthetic concerns that are very clearly expressed in the testimony from the residents nearby. Again, just in case anyone hadn't seen the application or wasn't familiar, this location of the proposed tower is on King Road. It's really in the parking lot behind Big Y, but it is on the King Road side of that parking lot. There is a small line of trees in between, but as the folks said earlier today, it is closer to the residents than certainly I think any of us would like to see. But again, in a pretty densely residential area in the south part of town, there's not a lot of great options. And so from staff's perspective, we didn't, throughout this, notification process and whatnot, feel this was an application worth objecting to. I will say, we would support, and I did say to Mr. Peters, and I would say again tonight, I would support sending a letter tomorrow, happy to send a letter tomorrow after discussion with the council, in support of making the tower a monopine structure to kind of resemble a pine tree, like the one over on the church property, just off Academy Road. I know that's something Mr. Peters requested when we talked as a possible alternative to obviously the preferred outcome he would like to see of us rejecting or opposing the tower. And also a request that we have access reserved, as we've done on some other towers, for emergency services radio equipment on the tower. I'd like to put that into the letter as well as a request from the town that the siting council can order some space on the tower for us to use as emergency services radio equipment. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can answer. Again, the process is really a state process. We haven't been intimately involved, other than to say on the global issue of cell coverage in the south end. It's certainly my feeling, it's the feeling of the police chief, the fire chief, and I know speaking for the CEO of Elam Park, a real concern that cell coverage just isn't getting any better in that area, and they'd really like to see something. So that's where we are, and so happy to have a discussion now about what the next step is.
Questions, comments? Mr. Veliber.
So, question, I know, Sean, you touched on it a little bit, but obviously, one of the questions I guess I would have is, has there been other, I guess, how much interaction have you had with other, with this cell tower developer, and also over time, as far as, and discussing other locations, that it could happen? I mean, obviously, you mentioned Elam Park, obviously. Obviously, it's very important that the south end has cell service, reliable cell service, especially in that area, since you do have both Elam Park and Southwick right there as areas that, obviously are as important, but obviously the whole neighborhood, having that south end be covered is important in general. And so I guess the question, what other properties have you heard about as far as, have they had opportunities? Have they tried looking at other properties, getting, are there other places where they're trying to get cell reception and it just isn't working? I mean, Elam Park seems like it might be the best place for it. Have they tried at Elam Park?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I connected the same, applicant group, who I think I'd first come into contact with when they were looking at potentially the RWA well property further south, past the Mary Maids building there, just south of that, there's a RWA property. I know, according to the application, they looked at Cheshire Nursery, 1317 South Main Street. Cheshire Nursery wasn't interested in hosting a tower. They looked at Cheshire High School, and there was no feasible location. Plus, I think it's a little further north from the coverage map that they're looking to improve. They did approach us and Chief Kasner for our South End Fire Station. Again, kind of would have been the same proximity problem, candidly, to what you have with the back of Big Y. But also there was no suitable location that would still allow apparatus to articulate the parking lot. Although that was something we considered. And the town has hosted, and we do host a cell tower at the treatment plant, for instance, and it's a revenue generator for the town. And so certainly we definitely looked at, but it wasn't feasible. Again, and they looked at, and then again, Elam Park. Elam Park was, it was determined the parcel was too, the ground space on the site was limited and the building was not tall enough to consider a roof-mounted tower, according to the application. So my first hope was that by connecting Brian Bedard with the folks from the Cell Co partnership, that they would build something right there at Elam Park. See, that was the central part. We know Cook Hill itself and Elam is the source of a lot of the concerns and complaints, so we thought that was a natural fit. But for whatever reason, those parties couldn't, and what it says here is there wasn't enough appropriate roof structure or coverage to allow a tower there.
Gotcha. So they looked at that and they determined that either topography or whatever wouldn't allow that to do, and obviously I assume they have to have certain levels of ranges and other things that they factor in. Just out of curiosity, how tall is this tower? Do we know?
90
90-something
feet?
feet?
90 feet.
90 feet.
Okay. 94?
94 feet.
And there's gonna, and so that wouldn't, and obviously, so that obviously wouldn't be big enough to, is there an antenna on the top of the fire department? Is that, I mean, that's not tall enough to probably meet that requirement, right? So it would have to be a separate pole in that area in order to meet
That was
whatever
their
they have
first
to do.
proposal, yep.
Right. So it sounds like, I mean, as much as, you know, it sounds like they've tried different areas and different locations, and obviously I don't know enough about them to know how many places they have to try before they, you know, settle on a spot, or if they even really have to try at all, right? As long as the siting council says it's okay, it's okay. But I guess the question is, you know, one of the questions that has been raised as a concern is that it's so abnormally close to residential neighborhoods. And I realize that one side of the street's commercial and one side's very residential. And so anything on that side of the street is gonna become is gonna be pretty close to the, sort of the residential line that's gonna be there. And is that, and I guess, is there any way for us to oppose this? But I guess ultimately, if we oppose it, then where else is it gonna go? So that's the other, I guess, the other big issue. So.
Yeah, again, I guess from our perspective, again, it's been a balance of the public safety concerns versus that particular location. And if there was a better one, I would certainly support it, but I haven't, you know.
Right. And if I could just ask one last question, is it, with these towers, you know, in talking with Mr. Peters earlier, he raised a question, that is, it's gonna be fairly close to the road. I mean, some of this, you know, it's not gonna be that far off from the road. Is there any hazard to the town, from either thawing ice or other issues that may come off this tower and sort of not only potentially hit houses, but more importantly, fall into the road itself? I mean, those things may collect ice and other things in a storm, and if these things thaw out and fall, is this gonna be something that we're worried about coming down on King Road?
My understanding is it's not that close to King Road, for that to be a concern, according to the maps. That's my.
Mr. Malone, and then,
So I did work for the siting council years ago, and I haven't recently, but if we have an opinion on this, what does that matter? Does it matter to the siting council?
Based on the schedule for the matter, the siting council had a public hearing on June 13th, and the deadline for public comment is July 13th. So the siting, you know, the time to intervene or to seek to become a party has expired. So when you ask, does it matter to the siting council, anything you submit to the siting council by July 13th will just be considered public comment.
And does the siting council care what the town council's
Sure.
opinion? I mean, would
Sure.
that matter to them?
Well, it does. I mean, they take it into consideration, you know, looking at the docket during the hearing tonight. I also see that the siting council submitted 56 interrogatories to the applicant. So the siting council had a lot of questions about the application. But obviously, they would take into consideration any public comment, including comment from the legislative body of the applicant town.
For one, I understand that there's a health and safety issue associated with this. I don't understand the depth of it. I mean, I don't lose cell service in that area when I drive. I have someone that lives in Southwick, and I never lose cell service when I'm there, so I don't know how bad the cell service is personally. But I've never heard of cell towers being this close to residences either in my personal experience. And it seems like with all the vacant land there is on the east side of Route 10, in that vicinity, some of it is easement land with a gas company and other land. I can't believe they've done it, just without knowing the background, that they've done an exhaustive search. So I would love to see the background and see what properties they searched to make sure that they haven't missed anything. And I would be supportive of opposing this installation. That's my own opinion.
Any other, Ms. Kramer, I'm sorry.
Couple of questions, just I live right, use that intersection all the time. I live right on South Brooksville. All calls and most, anything you're using in your car drops at that particular site, and it extends in both ways, specifically around that intersection. Not that that is a reason for putting a cell tower where it isn't wanted. As far as cell towers being located in certain areas, depending on density, cell towers are put anywhere and everywhere. Specifically in Cheshire, we do have a lot of land that can be chosen from, but outside of Cheshire or in a more urban area, they put cell towers literally outside people's windows. But that's neither here nor there. We have an abundance of land to choose from, and I know that they've looked through multiple parcels. I have a question. This is more legal as I'm learning about the planning and zoning rules. Big Y is a commercial, privately owned property, and they are allowed within their rights to lease this land to a cell phone tower within their landowner rights without, is that, because I'm learning about this now with watching everything that's going on in P&Z. Where do we come in? I want every effort that's put towards moving this location to be an actively engaged and positive effort. What say do we have over a commercial entity and what they do with their property?
Well, this is the cell tower application. The Siting Council has exclusive jurisdiction over it. Local planning and zoning has, it used to be up until the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that these applications were heard by local planning and zoning commissions. The whole driving force behind the Telecommunications Act of 1996 was that planning and zoning commissions were getting bombarded by neighborhood opposition and cell towers weren't getting built. So Congress took it away from planning and zoning and gave it to siting councils. So we don't have any say over the siting of a cell tower. Doesn't go to planning and zoning at all.
Is that because of the nature of the property that's willing to house it? Because it's,
If it was a residential property, it doesn't matter. There's residential properties, there's.
but they would have to give permission, the owner of the
From the
property.
siting council. You can't, there's no such thing as saying it's prohibited as a matter of right on any property. So you could have a farm in Litchfield County, and siting council approves a cell tower in the middle of your farm, you got your approval.
So if Big Y wasn't amenable and the siting council decided to put it over at, the forested end of Cheshire Nursery, that would just happen? Without say of,
Everything goes to the siting council.
okay. Which I understand, and the siting council is putting in a Big Y, but I know that Cheshire Nursery, which is closer to Cook Hill, they said no. So Big Y, I'm assuming, said yes.
Well, the property owner would have to enter into a lease to allow a cell tower developer to locate a tower on their land. So it's a transaction between the property owner and the lessee, the tower developer, and then the tower developer is the applicant at the siting council.
Thank you.
Ms. Allard.
Thank you for that information. John, I agree with you that I would also like to see exactly what went into the other possible locations. I don't know how much pull or how quickly we can get that information, and I don't even know what good it would do at this point since the deadline is so nearby. Also, if my understanding is correct, it sounds like we don't really have much authority over these decisions. However, I am in favor of advocating for our community, and since there is, a lot of concern regarding this, I think that as a council, we should at least express their concern and possibly request that if the siting council does still decide to put the tower there, request that they do something to make it more aesthetically pleasing, perhaps, evergreen trees. I don't know what they can potentially do. But just something to make it not so offensive to the homeowners.
Mr. Jinks.
Thank you. As far as the monopine option, is that, I mean, we can ask for that. What's the likelihood of them granting that, option to us? Is that, I imagine it's a lot more expensive to put those up than just to,
It really comes down to whether the applicant's willing to do it or not. The siting council isn't typically going to entertain a lot of demands for aesthetics, but if it's, look, there's no reason why you can't ask for it. There's no reason why. What they do with it, whether the applicant is amenable to working to satisfy the community, to satisfy the siting council, you don't know unless you ask.
Mr. Walsh?
I know Mr. Peters is anxiously waiting to talk to us all, but I just had a couple of things to ask. I live near the prison, and prison decides to put a solar farm in the backyard, and my neighbors got all upset. So what we had to do, we couldn't get the state to take them away. We said, well, maybe you can make it a little more aesthetic for our neighbors and plant trees. Sometimes a compromise is better than just trying to tell them not to do it at all. I would be for if we can get the owners to do the monopines to do that. Just in your experience, I'll give it to our town attorney, how often does the siting council really turn down an application? I mean, does this sound like if we come to them and say, no, we don't want it, they would say, oh, okay, Cheshire doesn't want it, they don't do it, or what's the chances of that happening?
I mean, it really depends upon the application. There's propagation studies that are done to determine whether or not the location of the tower is going to fill the gaps in service. And there's also tests that are done to determine what height is needed. So typically the siting council wants the tower to be as low as possible, right? But that often depends as well on how many antennae you want to put on the tower. So, a 94-foot tower, my guess is that that's probably the lowest it can be and meet the propagation coverage requirements that they have. In terms of, how often do they turn down an application? I mean, again, the whole idea behind the Telecommunications Act was to get gaps in coverage filled. So more often than not, they're going to approve an application, but it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. There can be, conditions that are imposed, and expressing your opinion to them. I can't speculate about. It's not like they get the opinion and they throw it in the garbage, or they get the opinion and say, forget all the evidence, forget the record. We've heard from the Cheshire Town Council, that settles everything. It's not an all or nothing proposition. So certainly there's nothing to be lost by letting them know that the council discussed this at a meeting, and this is the council's request.
Mr. Velaber and then Ms. Pearson.
Okay. Thank you. My question, it just goes back, one of the things that Mr. Peters had mentioned earlier was there had been obviously, a couple requests for opinions from the town, or a couple of notices of this pending thing. And obviously, and I'm just curious, why haven't, what is our normal process and procedure when we get these things, and why haven't we responded to any of those prior requests for information? And are we only doing it now because the residents heard about it and are complaining? Or I guess, because it sounds like there's at least 3 other opportunities or requests for information or feedback from the town, and we haven't submitted any feedback up to this point. So I guess I just want to find out, is that normal for us? Do we not normally comment on it unless we're getting complaints from neighbors, or do we, how do we normally handle cell tower requests?
I mean, I don't think there's any standard procedure. All of those local options are options. We could certainly adopt a kind of a more formal policy for future applications if you'd like, but we've done all, we've done all the, we had a hearing on the one for Academy Road, and nobody testified on it, whether that influenced this one or not. I think its location in the south end, again, from staff's perspective, certainly, this one meets a overarching need that we've heard repeatedly about. And, you know, maybe for that reason, we weren't objecting to it from initially. But again, it's a public process. It's noticed. It was noticed in March. The hearing was a public hearing. I had it in my town manager's report a month ago, 2 months ago, and submitted it around. It's certainly an opportunity for folks to comment on a different direction if they'd like to do it. But there's no formal process, I guess, is the short answer. Thank you.
Ms. Pearson?
It's clear that there's a need, a safety need. At the same time, I think what really resonated was Mr. Peters' comment regarding the fact that, on average, what the closest, I believe you said, was a cell tower in the past was 235 feet. And this one is 85 feet away from a resident, which I think is concerning, and I would support if we are to communicate. That's something that I would like us to communicate, is that our concern regarding the proximity of this tower, given precedents with other towers across the state. And I would also support that if they're going to go through with this, despite whatever we think, that they at least consider the aesthetics and the monopine. So I think that it is important that we express our concerns for residents and that we express these recommendations going forward.
If I could just clarify one thing on that point, and again, I'm just going off of the map that's in the official application. It's 85 feet from the tower to Big Y's property line. It's 168 feet from the tower compound to the closest residence, at least according to what they submitted. 68.
168.
Again, it's not my application, I'm just going off of what the map says. Yep. Here, I can pass this down if you'd like. You can pass that down all the way if you'd like.
Mr. Peters, this is the council's opportunity to ask questions. I will get to you, I promise, and I appreciate your patience. Sean, with regard to RWA, I know Mr. Veliber asked this with regard to a couple sites. Do you know if they looked at or had any conversations with RWA?
So I do, because a couple of years ago, or probably 2021, the RWA reached out informally to me to see if we would be supportive of a cell tower on their property. They were considering engaging with, I think, the same folks, Cellco Partnership. And that, in that case, though, while that property goes pretty deep off of Route 10, the only suitable location, because of the, I think it's the well field or the pump equipment that's on that property, was going to be right on Route 10. It would have been a same version of I think, the same problem, maybe even closer, directly across from that.
Brentwood,
Right.
the entrance to
The
Brentwood.
entrance to Brentwood, correct. So, at the time, I mean, again, it was really their decision. They were just asking if we would feel strongly one way or the other about it, and we just had an informal conversation about it. But they ended up not pursuing a cell partnership with the tower company. But I do know at the time.
RWA didn't, or Verizon, or the tower?
RWA didn't. After the conversation with us that the only suitable location was going to be right on Route 10, they, and you know, some of those concerns, I think, they decided not to proceed.
Mr. Peters, you've waited patiently, so public comment is at the beginning, which we allowed you to do, but we did a 180 on you, so I will allow you to have the last word before we deliberate and give our recommendation to the town manager.
There are so many things to react to that I've already forgotten half of them. This is not Jay Peters talking. This is what I've learned from the Siting Council. Siting Council either rejects or approves an application. It states in their bylaws that they have no obligation to find an alternative site, that you don't have an obligation to find an alternative site, and that the residents don't have an obligation to find an alternative site. So your opinion does matter. I engaged in dialogue with them, and they keep telling me, we've asked Cheshire 3 times for their opinion. Go tell your municipal government to give their opinion. So they're waiting for it. To answer your question, don't shake your head, they told me. And it is 85 feet. The pad is 20 feet, and it's the width of 2 pads to King Road. I can't think of the other things, I'm sorry. Joe Biden isn't the only one who gets stage fright. When an applicant looks for a site, they're looking for a cost-effective site. This site behind Big Y is cost-effective to them because they need to hook up to power. And if you notice on the diagram of the site that they're hooking up to a King Road power source. That's why it's important to them. That's why Elam Park is not an appetizing site for them. Elam Park has plenty of land that we don't even realize is Elam Park's that's set behind the land trust. But it's too far away from power. They'd have to invest too much into power. Another point, City of Westport. They were one of the more recent approvals by the Siting Council. Siting Council turned down the applicant for their first site in Westport. That site happened to be a similar situation to Brentwood Drive and King Road. 2 high-powered attorneys happened to live on their version of King Road and Brentwood Drive. So they were, I'm sure, providing their services at a reduced cost. So they succeeded in forcing the applicant to choose a second site. To answer your question about have they ever been turned down, that was, I think, 2021. You don't have to find an alternative site. It's up to the applicant to find an alternative site. But they would like, your opinion does matter, which is why as soon as we found out about this, we've been going straight to the Siting Council. Develop a dialogue with them. They don't do anything verbally. That's part of their rules. They don't want to have any communication misinterpreted as an agreement or anything like that. So it's all in writing. I have a stack of paper like this on my dining room table of communications back and forth with them to try to find out. Monopine, it's a $200,000 investment. It's nothing to them to do it. They'll take that to get the site. They'll do a monopine. Somebody negotiated the monopine for the United Methodist Church on Academy Road, and they got it. The other thing I would suggest, if you're going to put something in a letter and put your conditions in, the Siting Council issues 3 documents. One is findings of fact. One is the last one is a decision, and it's a D and C, a decision and conditions. So they'll say we have agreed to approve the applicant's application, but here are the things that must happen in order for that application to be approved. One of them is monopine. The second one that would help address our concerns is an annual monitoring of the RF signal, the radio frequency signal, to ensure that it's within safety standards. And you would be the town manager, and the town council would be the monitors that they have to report to. It's very inexpensive. They set a guy in a truck there with a monitor. This is my personal concern about the radio frequency is that when you look at, when you read I've never seen such a site so well documented as the Connecticut Siting Council's website. Just read it, and it just I didn't invent this information. I'm no genius. I just read it. And the problem with Brentwood Drive is that the radio signal coming off of that tower is horizon dependent. It's just, it goes straight out. And I objected when I contacted the council based on topography, because Brentwood Drive is up the hill from King Road, and the tower signal seeking a horizon is going to be aimed right at my house on the hill on King Road. So if there is any adverse health effects to radio frequencies, it's coming right at the side of the hill, especially at such close proximity. That's all I can remember to react to your conversations. I'm trying to provide you with factual information. This isn't my opinion. If it's opinion, I've labeled it as opinion. But this is why I'm so passionate about this and so involved, is a lot of the people, the 96 people who signed this thing, don't have the time or the energy or the stubbornness to tackle this, and I did. So I'm just, I view this as my version of what you do as public service.
Thank you, Mr. Peters, appreciate it.
Sure, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Mr. Peters, a quick question. What, you asked about the radio frequency testing. I'm just curious, what does that, if you're concerned about the radio how does that help you? I guess, is that because if it's out of a certain range, it's more dangerous than other things? I guess that question. So what does the monitoring do?
If it's inadvertently too high, that's when you end up with health effects.
Okay.
I mean, you know, 3 Mile Island was supposed to be safe too.
Right.
Somebody just makes a mistake and boosts the signal moves a decimal point over and boosts the signal by 10 times, you're getting that much more cancer-causing radio frequencies.
Thank you. Just curious.
You know, that's why I said the only reason we can oppose this is on proximity, because they claim that they're well within the tolerances. But I would request that be monitored. That's what Westport did also. In fact, many of the applications that I looked at insisted upon monitoring. And if you look at there's an online file system for docket number 521, ours, and there's a blank spot for municipal input. It's there waiting to be filled. So please respond. And they're anxious to work with you. I mean, I'm trying to get a dialogue with you going to let you know how to get this done. If you could address the appearance concerns and the safety concerns, which can be done as a condition of approval.
Thank you. And we are before the deadline, and we intend to fill that void. So I am going to throw something out on the table, and we can discuss it and decide whether that's the direction or whether we want to tweak it based on kind of the range of comments that I heard. First of all, I think we should send a letter to the Siting Council from the town manager. And tonight, the town council would authorize Mr. Kimball to do the following. Send a letter to the Siting Council citing 4 points. Number 1, our public safety concern with the drop of service in the south end, specifically Elam Park, where if a resident inside Elam Park were to fall and not be able to get to a landline but had their cell phone with them, they may or may not be able to call 911. That is an issue for me. This council has always talked about public safety being our top priority. Number 2, speaking of public safety, that we are concerned with the proximity in the residential area that this tower would have to residences. The stats in some way, shape, or form, we are under the understanding that 235 has been the minimum distance between a tower and a residential home. This one appears to be somewhere between 85 and 168, depending on what we've heard, feet. So those would be the concerns. The public safety concern with not having service in that area, the public safety concern with the proximity that this cell tower would have to residential property. At a minimum, we would offer two conditions. Number one, that it would be a monopine design, and number two, that there would be annual monitoring of the RF signal levels to ensure that they weren't above the legally allowed limits for cell towers. And I will throw that on the table. Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said there. I think those are all good points. The one thing that I was wondering, as our town attorney said, that the siting committee doesn't have to require the monopine. Do we go and talk to the property owner and ask them, as part of their contract with Verizon, if they would consider trying to get them to do the monopine? Is that the best way to go at it versus the siting council?
I would do both.
So I would ask our town manager then as well to reach out or copy the landowner as well on that and ask them to, to negotiate that as part of the deal, if that's the way we're going.
Other comments? Ms. Kramer?
I'd like to add, along with Elam Park, also Southwick, to that drop-in coverage area.
Okay. Yep.
And I would really like to, at some point, get to, how close is it to residences? Because the difference between 160 and 80, that's a big visual difference aesthetically. So how do we find out, what is it? We have two separate numbers being given to us at this point with no
I actually think
recourse.
Mr. Peters correctly clarified it. He was referring to 80 feet to the property line. I was referring to the same thing. It's 80 feet to the King Road property line. Okay, yeah, so it's 80.
Aesthetically, there's a difference between 160 and 180 for sure.
Right, I'm just going off the map and the number that's right on the map that shows a line to
Yeah.
the property, and it says 168 feet.
So 170 feet.
So
It's 80
this
feet to
is-
the King Road property line.
Still close, just trying to get the best facts possible to just get my thoughts together.
So this is showing on the map provided by Tarpon Towers to the Siting Council, they are showing that is 168 feet from the tower to the residence at 1041 King Road. And it is 85 feet from the tower to the property line at 1041 King Road. If that,
The rest of that difference
So-
comes up from property line to house.
is the distance, so it's 80 feet from the property line to the house.
So it's the property line of the resident, not the property line of Big Y.
Correct.
Now, Peter, there's an end to that arrow there. I think it's the property line to Big Y. That's why it's 80, I think it's 80 feet
Oh,
off
okay.
of the line there. That's why the question about ice on the tower, it's 80 feet from the road.
Yeah.
That's what I.
Sean, is there, have we quantified like the issue with coverage in the south end as far as like how much of an area there is not covered, or it's an,
Yeah, in the application, there's plenty of coverage maps at different frequencies. And as you look through, you'll see this, there's sort of a swath of the south end kind of running along Cook Hill, sort of a diagonal a little bit, kind of east to west. I can hold it up if you'd like, or we can pass more of these around, and you'll see the, you know, the, I guess, degradation of cell coverage quality from the center of town, which is bright blue, to green to yellow to sort of depending on what frequency you're on. But not, I mean, in terms of quantify, in terms of number of drop calls, I don't have it.
right. Well, I guess what you're describing is kind of what I was, just some sort of metric of what's
So,
missing, you know?
It looks like this. And so the proposed tower is here, and this is the yellow, this is the south part of Cheshire, that's the Hamden line. And that yellow right there is the coverage problem in Cheshire. At that frequency, again, that, there's certain frequencies, I think they would be lower frequencies, where you'll still pick up a little better coverage, but you can still see the gap is this yellow area, depending on what, this is 1900 megahertz. I do not pretend to be an expert in all this, by the way, but I know that the yellow is the poor coverage, green less, and blue in the center of town, and circled around all of these existing cell towers. So that's the coverage gap, and Elam Park is right there, Southwick is right there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, basically Cook Hill right on the other side of Route 10.
I also want to
And
point out,
is, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I just had one more thing.
yeah,
And is the concern from the fire department, police department, is that concerned, as Peter was describing, that a resident cannot contact them, or are they concerned about their own communications being an issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly that residents can't call from their cell phones. Anywhere that doesn't happen, that's a public safety concern. Jack said there's some parts of the south end where they still have lapse in radio coverage, and he'd like the option to add in the future, funding allowing, to put some antennas on a tower in the south part of town, but there's other ways around that. We have a lot of equipment on the Higgins Road Tower that covers a lot of south part of town.
This one?
But radio frequencies are different than cell
Oh, I thought
phone
you did.
frequencies, and it's not necessarily apples to apples. But I think most of the public safety concern are the people that have said they can't have a call,
Add volume, so.
and they,
Yeah, go
whether it's a
ahead.
911 call or not, they know they can't have a call. They know that if they were having a 911 call and got dropped halfway through it, that could be problematic. I think that's just the concern. It's just a general public safety concern.
There is also, there is Wi-Fi phone use as well. I mean, if you have Wi-Fi, I mean, a lot of people switch over to Wi-Fi phone as well. So, I mean, that's an option that I would hope that Elam Park would talk to their residents about in that case, but, you know,
Absolutely. There's also repeaters, and there's other things you can do to boost your signals, so
But if
I think
somebody's in
Elam
their
Park's done
car
some-
and they, you know, they can't get the Wi-Fi there, so I mean, that's
if
the
there's
issue.
an accident at that intersection
Right.
especially, I've had friends break down that actually walk to my house to be able to use call AAA, or there's no
Right.
cell phone service in that area. They
And as you
can't
get
call.
into South Brooksville, that area with the trees, it's more dense and it's harder to get.
I was going to say the same. This actually came up in our Next Gen School Building Committee conversations because there was concern about doing cell phone coverage testing on the site in advance, knowing that the south end, Norton, and Norton's general area has pretty poor coverage. This came up just organically as part of a conversation at a school building committee meeting about concerns there. And so they certainly took the news that there may be a tower as very positive because it prevented the school building committee from having to do additional maybe cell phone coverage testing, you know, whether they have to add funds for repeaters in the new Norton building and things like that, so
We'll
less of a
put one on
concern.
top of the new school.
Yeah.
So, I gave, okay, Mr. Velliber, you just want to return? So comments regarding the proposal to ask the town managers to send in a letter with the 4 points with a couple tweaks. Is that the direction everyone is interested in going? Yeah.
I'm a little conflicted, actually. I'm granted the public safety concern. But I might, I'm not crazy about the location, given it's such a dense residential area. Obviously there's the challenge of finding another location, but I would lean toward saying we don't want it altogether in that location, but I don't know if that's the appetite we're at.
At this point, what effort would go into compromise and what effort would go through we say no? Like, can we say no? Just
Yeah,
get that on the
absolutely.
record, saying, no, you need to find another suitable location?
Well, we oppose it. We would go on we have the option of saying we oppose that location of the cell tower, but ultimately, the decision rests with the siting council as to whether they're going to approve it or not.
And we're opposing it due to the proximity of residences? That would be our,
It sounds like that would be the crux of it if,
or Jim's, what he's voicing right now, that's,
Right.
okay.
There's even a monopine, I live down the street from the one behind the church. I don't see it from my house, but it's large. It's not something that, it's gonna look better than a cell tower without the pine tree look, but it's still, it's not, it's a strange thing, so, but it's kind of neither here nor there. I just think the residential neighborhood I have an issue with that, but I also, like I said, I'm conflicted because we have a public safety need as well, so.
Just to help you out, the tower on King Road is proposed at 94 feet. The tower at the church is 95 feet. Virtually identical.
I understand where Jim's coming from, but if we just send a letter saying we oppose it, I think it's better to put in there, we would prefer another location. However, if you can't find, if you feel so enticed into making this approval, then here are some conditions that we would like you to consider, versus just saying we oppose it without giving them any conditions that we would like. I think it's important that from what I hear, they turn down very few of these, and I think I understand Jim saying we should come back and say we oppose it, and we could say we oppose it. However, if this is going to still go forward, we would like some conditions and give them those options.
I agree with Donovan. I think, if regardless of what we do, I think we have to give them an even or, just because we don't know what they're going to do. So at a minimum, we have to at least give those conditions. I think, if we opposed it, that would be fine with me as well. But I think I do have, like Jim, I am a little concerned that, we have to make sure that, we have Elam Park and Southwick and other places that have to get that coverage. So we need to address that, and that may be something that the siting council is going to take into consideration for approval. But regardless, even if we say we are opposed to it, we need to at least include those. But if you do go forward with it, because siting council is generally probably more likely than not as a tendency to go forward with it, I think we do need to put the restrictions about the radio frequency and the monopine, at least to address that. It's like, if you're going that direction, then please consider these in that decision.
Fiona?
I would just offer as well that we clarify that monitoring the safety, we are concerned in terms of the proximity, that this is a safety issue for those residents. And I think that's something that we need to stress, because even though, we're talking about the safety issue in terms of not having cell phone access, but that proximity to those radio waves is a safety concern that we are significantly concerned with.
Go ahead, Jen.
So Peter, I am in agreement with everyone now if we can do it this way. And I think what you said first is we acknowledge that there's a public safety issue and it's important to us. So we say that first. The second is that we oppose this location because of its proximity to existing its close proximity to existing homes and neighborhoods. And we request that the applicant be asked to look at alternative locations or in the alternative that they've satisfied the siting council that they've done an exhaustive search already, and this is the only location that's available in at this time, because I'm presenting information that we haven't seen right now. And if they've already done that, and the siting council's satisfied with it, I'm not sure if we can overrule that or overlook that. And then, on the assumption that it goes forward.
And then at a minimum,
And then if it goes forward. So I think if we can do it that way, I'd be comfortable. But I would like to oppose it and ask that they look for alternative locations, or give them the opportunity to say, look, if they've really done an exhaustive search like Sean believes they have, and the siting council is satisfied with that, having reviewed these over and over again, then so be it. Let's not hold this up.
last chance, Mr. Peters, because really this is the council's opportunity to deliberate, so this is your last comment. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Attempt to be helpful. When the siting council turned down Westport, they included language about why they turned them down. When I communicated with the siting council, I just cut and paste that language out of using their own terminology as to why I opposed it. I could share that same language with you. You seem to be searching for language to express your opposition.
Well, we have to come up with specifics that are appropriate to this location in this particular tower.
These are. I'd be happy to share the language with you. It's 2 short paragraphs. I try to put it in terms that they've used themselves, that they've already accepted, so why reinvent the wheel? Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So I think, and I'll do a straw poll in a minute, but I think where we have landed is to acknowledge that, 1, we have a public safety concern in the south end of Cheshire. 2, that we are opposing the location of the cell tower for the reason of proximity to a residential neighborhood. 3, go ahead.
Jeff,
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
With all due respect, if you send the siting council correspondence that says, we oppose the application because of the proximity of the tower to residential property, but on the other hand, we got a real public safety concern in the south, they're not going to know what to do with that. So I think if the consensus is to oppose it, then just oppose it. Don't, because they can't do anything about you can't say turn the application down, but help us with our public safety issue in terms of coverage. Because all they have in front of them is this one application.
Yeah.
So if you're going to oppose it, just oppose it.
Isn't this a true crux of a town council's debate? The safety issue of Elam Park and Southwick and a highly congested, often accident-filled intersection needing access to cell phone service for public safety issues, and weighing that against the public safety issues of another neighborhood. Here we are. It's a true, it's what we signed up for.
So, but Jeff, we can, like what Don suggested, we can say that we oppose it and then say if they go ahead with it, we still want these conditions, right?
I think what you do is you explain why you're in opposition and say, in the event that the siting council is inclined to approve the application, at a minimum, the following conditions should be imposed. That's all. All I'm saying, the only thing I'm saying not to do is if you give them, I understand that it's a problem, but they can't solve the problem other than by granting the application. And if you're asking them to oppose the application, and I understand why you'd want them to know that we do have this coverage gap. But I think with respect to this, it's a record-based process. That's why Mr. Peters was talking about how everything's in writing, because it's a record-based process, so that if the application is denied, the applicant can go to Superior Court and have a record-based appeal and say it was arbitrary and capricious. Here's the record. So I think if you really want them to weigh the council's opinion, I think you got to just pick one or the other. And if it's we oppose it, in the event that it's approved, here's the conditions that you have to impose at a minimum. I think that's the way to go. I'm just concerned that if you say to them, we acknowledge we've got this coverage gap, that they're going to say, well, this doesn't help us because on the one hand, they want us to deny it. On the other hand, they said they got a public safety problem. And I think that neutralizes it.
So, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Talbot, if we were to do this, would you recommend that we do this as a formal resolution then? Or can we do it as a recommendation to the town manager? Do you want to formalize it then, Jeff?
The minutes are going to be the same, right? Because you're going to vote
Right.
on what to
we'll
instruct
do
the
a straw
town
poll,
manager to
yeah.
do. I think there should be a motion, a second, and a vote. Yeah.
So I guess I'll take this one. It'll be Resolution 070924-16. Be it resolved that the town council instructs the town manager to send in a letter to the siting council opposing the location of the tower on King Road due to proximity to residential. If the siting council were to approve the location despite the town's objection, at a minimum, we would want the monopine design and annual monitoring of RF signal, with a copy going to the landowner. Second from Mr. Walsh. Discussion. On the fly. You gotta love on the fly. Everybody, all right, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Yeah, 8.5. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Peters, for hanging in. All right, that brings us to 3 items that we are indeed moving to executive session. Unfortunately, Mr. Salamini, we will be asking you to stay, and we will have action on those 3 items when we come out of executive session. Those items are the Chesprocott Health District lease, the approval of a tax appeal settlement, and the approval of EMS contract extension with Trinity Health. Which brings us now to item 9, which is the town manager's report and communications.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Caught you
Chairman.
off guard, huh?
My microphone's on the wrong side. Oh, what's going on here? All right. So we talked about Bartlett South already. Just a reminder, Bartlett Beats concerts start Friday, July 19th, and will also be held July 26th, August 2nd, and August 9th. For each of those dates, they start at 7 p.m., and rain dates are the following Tuesday for each. So be sure to check out Bartlett Beats concerts. We are holding the monthly electronics and mattress recycling event. Again, thank you to the town council for supporting in the budget. We will be holding this Saturday, July 13th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at 1304 Waterbury Road, which is the old transfer station. Open to Cheshire residents, also includes drop-off for grass clippings and leaves. For more information on acceptable and unacceptable items, please visit the town's website. If you flip the page over, you'll see some photos of the work Cheshire Public Works has been doing. They've been making steady progress on site and accessibility improvements to Mixville Park. The sidewalk connecting the parking lot to the upper turnaround area by the pavilion has been completed. Paving of the additional expanded parking area and the accessible drop-off area will be undertaken later this week, and work on the ice rink area is expected to begin in the coming months. Demolition of 422 North Brooksvale's garage. So Public Works has been working to coordinate the demolition of the old garage located adjacent to the Norton School playground area, closest to North Brooksvale. This work is anticipated to begin before the end of July. Announcing the Cheshire Park and Rec Kindness Award. The Recreation Department wants to recognize and celebrate people who are invested in building a strong sense of community, demonstrate kindness to other residents. Cheshire's lucky to have amazing citizens, and we would like to acknowledge them. Now is the time to nominate someone over the age of 18 who you feel is a thoughtful, kind-hearted, and positive role model. Nominations can be done online at Cheshire MyRec or by stopping by the Youth Center, 559 South Main Street, for a paper nomination form. Those are due at the end of this week, Friday, July 12th. And just a few more. A reminder of our Projects Around Town page has been updated with various both updates and photos, including the Mixville Park pictures you just saw, at cheshirect.org/spotlight/projects. And last but certainly not least, we're very excited to provide an update that we've had 1,279 total individuals register for the summer reading program of all ages. This is nearly double the 648 people who registered last year. This breaks the all-time record for summer reading participants, which was previously 966 registrants. Cheshire Public Library is doing a lot more programming this year, with weekly story times continuing to run on a 6-week basis. There's also a summer reading closing party for participants who have finished the summer reading challenge, which is currently scheduled for Friday, August 16th. So great news, a lot of wonderful readers participating in town. And next town council meeting, August 13th, and that concludes my report.
Questions for Mr. Kimball? Mr. Velaber?
Thank you. And I know maybe this doesn't quite fit under this, but under the electronics recycling event. But Sean, maybe you may have spoken to somebody, resident. This has to do with dehumidifiers. I received a message from someone on dehumidifiers and when and where, if anything, they are recyclable. I know that they're obviously more like an air conditioner than they are like a refrigerator. So apparently nobody takes dehumidifiers. So I guess the question is, have you run into this question before, and have you, has there?
Well, I take a dehumidifier.
What?
I have no room for dehumidifiers in my house.
We know where you live.
I know,
You
exactly.
need a dehumidifier on your lawn.
I do know, yeah. I have heard that before, similar with air conditioning units, you know, the Freon or whatever.
Right, that seems to
in
be
there
the issue.
seems to be the issue. I know we don't accept them. As to where they are accepted, I also don't have an answer to that, so I could certainly do a little homework and try to find out or follow up if there is.
Well, I know that we had discussed it during the bulk trash pickup, and we had changed that they would take that stuff with the Freon, because they wanted us to have our residents remove the Freon, and we said that's too dangerous. So they did accept it, so I'm
Yeah.
wondering if AJ's made.
AJ may have made a special exception for, I'm not sure how that exactly worked, but yeah, I don't believe the electronics company that utilizes, or the Take-Two, I think it is.
Yeah, Take-Two, yeah.
I believe it's their rule, not ours, but I can certainly follow up, I just don't have it.
All right, that's fine, because I know, I believe that this resident did call AJ and what, their recycling arm of the AJ, and apparently they don't take that, so, so they were sort of in the query of, okay, that's great, now what do I do with it? And now that it's gone bad, like, what do I do with it, besides, just illegally dumping it somewhere, right? I mean, that's obviously, you don't really want anyone to do that. The question is, is there some way to find a place that they can find a home for it? Yep. If you find anything,
I can find out.
let me
If
know.
I do know, I'll share with the
Thank you.
council for sure.
My experience, pretty much, you put anything out at the curb, it disappears.
Also, there are scrappers that will pick that up.
Yeah. Yep.
Right online. I know the Facebook forum has a couple of amazing scrappers. You literally put what you want out on the curb, and it's gone. And they have avenues by which they recycle the Freon and everything that they need to do, and it's
Perfect, I'll let the person know that and just put it out there with a sign, free, hey,
Yeah, there you go. Doesn't work, free. Yeah.
it's free on.
He'll be, at this rate, you may be here all night. Any other questions for Mr. Kimball? Seeing none, we'll move to item 10, reports of committees of the council. Chairman's report, starting to my left, Ms. Kramer.
personnel, nothing to report.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report here either.
Budget Committee is off duty for a while.
Sustainability, nothing to report.
Nothing for miscellaneous. Item number 11, appointments, liaison reports. Again, to my left, Ms. Kramer, kick it off.
Environment, there will be a meeting tomorrow, 7 o'clock in room 115, if everybody wants to attend. There's a quorum expected. They are losing a member to the Veterans Advisory Committee, Tom Hickey. There is a prospective new member scheduled to be put up for appointment. That's it.
Mr. Wolf?
I just want to let everyone know that Arts Place is open for business at Ballinsocket. And this Friday, they're having an open house from 4 to 7. So I encourage the public to go visit, see the glorious new space upstairs. It's fantastic, and go take the class.
On that note, Mr. Wolf, I think I'll piggyback and say we did a ribbon cutting prior to this town council meeting at Arts Place. A great event, just an absolutely gorgeous space. We wish Joanne and Karen and the staff there all the best in their new forever home. I want to thank staff and everyone involved in getting them moved in there and getting things set up. Public Works, obviously the town manager staff, and everybody, all the department heads. I said in my remarks there that it really takes everyone to get this done, and it really did. And it was not only a worthwhile effort, but it's a beautiful space, and I encourage everyone to take a class there. Mr. Jinks? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Allard. I skipped.
I just want to say the Youth and Human Services Department, as well as the Public Safety Commission, they both have excellent Facebook pages. They oftentimes post on there of events that are happening, public safety, a lot of wonderful advice. And I would just ask everybody, including everyone on this council, to subscribe to those pages and also share them, because the more we can spread their good information, the more positive impact they can have. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, and I apologize. Now, Mr. Jinks.
I have no report.
Thank you. Ms. Pearson?
No report.
Mr. Walsh?
Town beautification postponed their meeting from last week till tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. So
Mr. Veliber? And Mr. Mylone? Thank you, sir. So I have one appointment, and then I'll throw it to my two appointment specialists. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 070924-17. Be it resolved that the Town Council appoints David Borrowy to the Sustainable Connecticut Cheshire Team to fill the vacancy of Bill Stanley. And Mr. Veliber, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Appointments, Mr. Wolf? No, those are the veterans. So they're good to go based on the resolution that you did earlier this evening. So we are covered with that. Brings us to item number 12, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Kramer.
No, I want miscellaneous.
Yep.
Council communications.
Okay, so you jumped the gun. So, town attorney's report, Mr. D'Onofrio, no report. Okay, we are now into council communications. Anyone have letters to the council?
We did receive a letter to the council that was emailed about the P and Z meeting last night.
Yes.
Does that have to be read into the record?
I haven't seen it either.
Oh, okay. It was submitted to comments, which I assume was town council, but. And not everyone, did you get it, John? I got it. Yeah. I did. So it was Don, Fiona, myself, there was, I think, 5 of us that received it, so. Ms. Kramer, if you would like to read it into the record, you can certainly do so. And if that is too small, that is okay too.
It was yesterday? Okay.
Wasn't it about the siting council? Is that what you're talking about?
No. Yeah. Do you have it?
Yeah, I found it here too, in comments.
So this is from Angelica Izquierdo. To whom it may concern, I'm writing to request that the Zoning and Planning Commission, our elected officials, which please reject the current apartment proposal. There are several factors and concerns that I have as a Chester resident regarding the location and proposed building style. The first and most concerning aspect of this building is the influx of traffic that will affect an already congested and accident-prone area during the day and especially during the morning and afternoon commutes. The proposed location is frequently at a standstill or a crawl. To add more traffic will inevitably result in a need to widen and reconfigure the road and deal with increased travel time and more traffic along the residential back roads in that area. Even if construction is slotted for that site and the surrounding areas, traffic will continue to be a problem during that time period. We simply lack the infrastructure. Please note that I'm reading directly from the text. Secondly, and almost as concerning, is the proposed height and quality of the housing. 3 to 5 story buildings are not in any way common to Cheshire. While I do not oppose affordable housing, I do oppose unsightly tall buildings that do not fit with the overall aesthetic and feel of our town. Literally, almost any design would be preferable to the proposed structure. Nice triplex-style townhomes, a few handicap-accessible ranch-styled units, and a semi-detached design similar to the East Mitchell Street apartments would be ideal and beautiful. It would also provide a significant number of apartments for families and seniors. The proposed quantity of apartments will make the area far too congested, and the current proposed structure will also be very unsightly and problematic for homeowners and property values. I respectfully ask that the investor's proposed plan be denied and that an alternate plan be proposed in place of the current one so that we can achieve the goals of our town and state while being mindful of the existing town residents' needs and frustrations regarding the current proposal and the implications that it will have on our roadway and community. I hope that my request and that those of the town meeting, which I missed because of work, be considered and thoroughly reviewed to achieve the best future of families that have made Cheshire their home. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact me at my email or number below. Angelica Izquierdo.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Madam Clerk, would you make sure that that gets sent to the entire council? Because, like I said, I think there were a couple holes in the distribution list.
If I might, just for the record, just so people know, I'm the principal developer on that project. I don't know why that's in front of the council in any way. It's a planning and zoning application. I don't think it's a land use issue, so I have no idea why that's a council communication, quite frankly.
Because it was, simply because it was sent to us, but yes. Moves us to items for executive session. We have 3, as I mentioned before. Items 8L, M, and O. So I will accept a motion to go into executive session to include everyone in this room with the exception of Mr. Peters.
I have one quick last question for the common council meeting.
Yes.
During the P and Z meeting last night, something piqued my interest, and that was the mention of a gas leak at the Shell gas station. How do we find out about that? A contaminated groundwater? Years ago? Okay, because there was no context put on it, so I just,
Okay.
is that something that we would be made privy to in sustainability, maybe?
It probably,
Like
if it was.
decades ago?
If it,
Oh, okay, okay.
That's the one over in the corner of between Mountain and
Yeah.
yeah.
There was no timeline put on what was said, so I was just curious as to, and there was mention of groundwater contamination, so I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm sure, I'm sure Deep looked at it and everything else.
So it wasn't like last year? Okay,
Yeah,
And if I think it was 10 years ago, it's probably.
yeah, it's probably,
Same.
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so, motion to go into executive session with everyone currently in the room right now. And second, and all in favor? Aye. All right. We are back on the record for the town council meeting and we are picking up with item 8L, the approval of lease with Chesprocott Health District. Mr. Jenks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 070924-13. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves the lease agreement with Chesprocott Health District as approved by said Chesprocott Board for property located at 1220 Waterbury Road pursuant to the terms presented and attached. And be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes Town Manager Sean M. Kimball to execute this lease agreement pursuant to the terms and conditions as presented.
We have a motion. Mr. Walsh is seconded. Any discussion from members of the council? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Item M is the approval of tax appeal settlement. Ms. Pearson.
Be it resolved, the Town Council approves resolution number 070924-14. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby authorizes the execution of a tax appeal stipulated agreement by and Town of Cheshire and the Cheshire Professional Park LLC 416 and 42 Highland Avenue. And be it further resolved that the town attorney is authorized and directed to act on behalf of the town, setting the form and upon the terms and conditions as presented at this meeting.
We have a motion. Mr. Veliber has seconded. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. And it brings us to item 8O, approval of Ms. Allard.
Be it resolved that the Town Council approves resolution number 0709, Trinity Health of New England for EMS service